Right. Good morning, everyone. It's 9:30, so we can make a start. Can I welcome you to the Development Committee? I'm Councillor Filmer. I'm Chairman of the committee. There's just a few housekeeping notes before we get underway. I've not been advised that we've got a fire drill planned today, so if alarms go off, then they're real. The exits are through the back of the room and to the sides. If anyone requires toilet facilities during the process this morning, they're located through the back door of the room. There is water at the side of the room for anyone who needs to have a drink during the meeting. If I could ask, if anyone's got mobile phones with them, please can you make sure they're either turned to silent or turned off, please, so they don't either interrupt the meeting or interfere with the sound system. And also just to remind members and members of the public that today's meeting is a hybrid meeting, meaning that we have the members of the committee are present in the room today, who will be debating and deciding the applications, but we are joined online in some cases by people who will be joining us as speakers, as presenters and as members of the public watching the proceedings this morning. It is just worth reminding everyone that only the members who are present in the room are able to actually vote on the applications before us. Also, just a reminder that the proceedings of today's meetings are being recorded, I think. Yes, they've got red lights on, so they will be available later on via YouTube for people to watch should they wish to. The format of the meeting is as per the agenda that's been circulated, and each application will be taken in turn. We'll bring forward those applications that have speakers present. The officers will make the presentation, and they can be found on the council's webpage for anyone who is joining us online. As I say, the applications will be taken in turn. The officers will introduce the applications and give the background and the detail. Where there's a registered member of the public to speak, we'll then ask the member of the public to speak. And after that, the members will then debate and decide the application. For the procedure of the actual, once we've had that debate, we will look for a member to make a proposal, which will be proposed and seconded to either grant an application, refuse an application, or potentially to defer an application. And then that will be voted on, and the result will be announced from the chair. We also, just do introductions for those of you who are joining us today, who you will be seeing. To my right on the top table is Mr. Taylor, who is representing Democratic Services. To my left, Mrs. DeVries, who is representing the planning officers. We will also be joined by other planning officers to make presentations, and as I said, there will be some online. We are also joined online today by Dawn Lehman, who is from our legal team, so should we need legal advice, that is available to us, and as if by magic, she's appeared on the screen. So if that is required, then we will receive that during the meeting. And I believe we're also joined today by our portfolio holder for development at Sedgemoor, Councillor Slocum, who again has joined us virtually on the screen. Right, I think, members, that brings us to the agenda itself. The first item on our agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any, please?
Yes, Chairman, apologies from Councillor Tony Haywood.
Thank you very much. All other members are present. Item 2 on the next item on the agenda is the minutes. Members, you'll have 2 sets of minutes just to keep you on your toes. The first ones we're going to take is the February minutes, which is the second ones in your agenda. They're the ones on page 23. Are there any amendments to those minutes that any members wish to propose? And if not, could I have a proposal that they're a true and accurate record? Councillor Kingham. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Grimes. All those indicate, please, who wish me to sign them as a true and accurate record. That's clearly carried. The second set of minutes we have with us is for the meeting of the 8th of March, which is on page 6. Again, are there any amendments? Councillor Betty. Just wait 1 minute while it comes live. Try again.
Thank you, Chairman. I was present at the meeting, but I'm not down as a present councillor.
Right.
I think it's the same for me as well.
Thank you. We'll get that amended. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
I should be on the Axbrew Drainage Board, but I seem to have been left off.
Okay, we'll get that amended. Any other updates? If not, with those updates, can I have a proposal that there are now a true and accurate record? Councillor Betty, thank you. Seconded Councillor Grimes. All those in favour that I sign those as such, please show. That again is clearly carried, so we will do that in due course. Next item is urgent business. I've not been advised that there's any urgent business which isn't on our agenda already. Item 4 is public speaking time. For the members of the public who've registered to speak today, as you've heard, the format of the meeting is the application will be presented by the officer. We'll then ask those of you who are present in the room to come forward to the speaker's chair. If there are any that are joining us virtually, we'll ask them to enable their microphone so that we can hear them. Just a reminder that you have 3 minutes to address the committee. For those of you who are in the room, you'll see there's a clock at the front which will count the time down, and that will then, if you can draw your comments to a close before that runs out. For those who are joining us virtually, unfortunately, they can't see the clock on the screen, so I will interrupt them when they've got 1 minute left to go, just to let them know that their time is coming to a close. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that we have from members, please? We'll start with Councillor Pearce.
I wish to declare a personal interest on the Bridgewater applications on pages 44, 88 and 99. I'm a member of Bridgewater Town Council, but I have not taken part in any discussions.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 37, the application is in my ward, but I've not taken any part in it at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Glassford.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As a member of the Bridgewater Town Council, I never took part in any of the application.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry. Hold on, Councillor Hendry, we'll need the microphone.
Sorry about that. Okay, application page number 37 in Barrow. I actually live in Barrow. I don't know the applicant. I've had no conversation with anybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, Councillor Evans.
Page 14 is a North Petherton application. I would have been a member of the town council at the time, but took no part in the application deliberations. And I'm also a ward member, and likewise.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a minute. It's not an agenda item. I've just spotted what I did.
That's all right. Just completely confused me there. It doesn't take much for Bill.
My apologies.
No worries.
Okay. I searched Petherton in it and came up with an application. My apologies.
No problem at all. I also need to declare on the applications on page 37 and on page 99. No, not page 37 and page 104. They're both within my division and ward. And so again, I've taken no part in any discussions on those applications. And I think Councillor Grimes might want to make an additional one as well.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I forgot, as I'm now a county councillor, the same as yourself. Thank you, Chairman. Take no part.
Thank you. Not seeing any other declarations. So for members of the public, it's important you know if there's any background that members have on an application. Where you've heard well, you would have heard a personal interest, it would mean that members might have some background, but they wouldn't prejudice their views, and therefore they can record it, but they can then take part in the discussions. I'll come back to you in a moment, Councillor Evans. If anyone had declared a prejudicial interest by the name, as you would have heard, it potentially could prejudice their views, and therefore they can't take part in this meeting in terms of that application. And where you've heard members declare that they've taken no part at the town and parish council level, that's because we have a standing order within this committee, which basically, to avoid what's called predetermination, in effect making your mind up at an earlier stage, we either get involved at the district level or at the parish and town. You can't do both. And where you've heard members say they've not taken part at that level, that is so they can come to this meeting and be involved in the decision making at this stage. Councillor Evans.
It's the North Newton one on page 129 I was meaning. Does that make sense?
Yes, but we'll need to declare that one this afternoon anyway, because
That's, yeah.
yeah, no problem. Okay, if members have finished on the declarations, that's fine. Move to the next item on the agenda, which is the planning applications themselves. The first one where we have a speaker present, I believe, on page 44, which is the rear of Carnival Court. If you'd like to introduce this one, please. Thank you. Mr. Lloyd.
Good morning, Chairman, members. Can you confirm that you can hear me? There were a few volume problems when we had a run through earlier.
Yeah, you're still quite quiet at the moment, but we can. You could, the members, can you all hear Mr. Lloyd, just to make sure?
I'll do my best to speak up.
Hold on, we think we're rectifying that. We heard you loud and clear then. So do you want to just try once again, Ian, just to give us a bit of a sound check?
Yeah, I'll do my best to speak up.
I think that's clear for everyone. Yeah, we can all hear you now. Thanks, Ian. Go ahead.
And can you see the presentation?
No, we can just see you at the moment.
Oh dear. Okay. I best have a share my screen then.
Now we've got the front cover.
Right. Thank you. So this is an application for land to the rear of Carnival Court off Taunton Road at Bridgewater. The application is for, it's been revised during consideration down from 15 dwellings and is now for the erection of 9 dwellings with associated access, amenity space and parking on the site of some existing outbuildings, which are to be demolished, but primarily it's open space. So the applications before committee due to the objections of Bridgewater Town Council and local ward member, and they're detailed in the consultation section of the report, primarily down to the loss of open space and some concerns about highway access. So this is a recent aerial image of the site, the arrow indicating the position of the existing access off Taunton Road. So it's the site of the former Hope Inn, which members may recall, which was redeveloped to provide the flats that you can see just to the southwest of the arrow. So this is the Carnival Court flats, and this is the existing access. The application site is a backland site. It's accessed through the same access to this point here. I don't know if members can see my cursor on the screen, and then it's the green land to the back of the gardens. So we've got Hamp Green Rise to the south and the west, and we've got Fernley Avenue to the north. So this slide advises members there's no updates. I do have one update to report, and that's in relation to condition 14, which is the landscaping condition. Because of issues in the supply chain, we're extending the period for the implementation of the landscaping from 9 months to 12 months. So it's just a simple change to the wording of that condition 14 from 9 months to 12 months. And it's not an update, but by way of clarification, there's some confusion in the consultation responses surrounding overhead power lines and drainage under public open space. So to be clear, there are no overhead power lines on this site, and there's none proposed, and there's no proposal currently for any kind of suds drainage under the public open space. This is a comment from the leisure officer that we always get on all applications where there's public open space, because as an authority, we don't adopt public open space which has overhead power lines or underground suds. So that's purely a comment to the applicant. It's not a proposal. So it's just clearing up that confusion. And to be absolutely clear, if the public open space is to be adopted, there would be clauses, the standard clauses in Section 106 agreements that preclude power lines or suds under the open space. Otherwise, the council simply won't adopt that open space. So turning now to the detail of the scheme, the site's well located in relation to the services and amenity of Bridgewater. I've got starred on the right-hand side, the existing sort of local centre that's got a shop and a takeaway. Just to the north, a short walk away, is the Morrison's supermarket, and the Bridgewater town centre is beyond. So in relation to services and amenities, well related, obviously Taunton Road, well served as a bus route. These next few slides are just photographs just to set the scene for members. So here we can see the existing Carnival Court flats built on the site of the former Hope Inn. We can see the existing access, it's quite wide, open, and the access through to the land at the back is sort of behind these cars here. And then panning up and down the road, and then a close-up of the car park and the access to the site. So slide 1 is stepping into the site through the car park. That's the entrance into the site. Members can see it's really overgrown. You can see some of the there's 3 small outbuildings. You can just see the roofs of them here. Slide 2 is from the garden of the rear of the flats at Carnival Court, looking towards the site, looking west towards the site. And then shots 3 and 4 are views within the site. And then outside of the site, looking in, view 1 is some garages accessed off Fernley Avenue with the site beyond. And then shot 2 is from the upper floor of one of the properties in Fernley Avenue, looking out across there in the neighbour's garden to the application site. And then the dwellings beyond are the rear of the dwellings in Ham Green Rise. Turning to the Ham Green Rise itself, so shot 1 is from the cul-de-sac at the western end of Ham Green Rise, looking out across the site, and then the properties on the left are the rear of the properties in Fernley Avenue. And then again, shot 2 is from Ham Green Rise, first floor, looking north across the site with the rear of the Fernley Avenue properties in the background. This is just a flood map, which shows that there are some minor flooding implications to the very eastern end of the site, essentially where the Carnival Court flats and car park has been built. So the majority of the site is not a flood risk in lowest flood zone 1, but there are some issues in relation to flood risk in relation to the means of escape, the same kind of issues that arose with the Carnival Court development. So this was the initial layout that was submitted for 15 dwellings. Members can see that it's a really quite dense development. There's not very much space for planting, especially for buffer planting, to replace the sort of wildlife habitat value. The eastern end of the site is pretty bare, with the existing Carnival Court bin stores, which are on this corner, only move very slightly, still pretty bare at the site entrance. Public open space, really cramped, really small, right next to a 4-bed house and the car parking, really unsatisfactory, as a result of which the scheme has been negotiated down from 15 to 9 units. So this is the current layout proposed, which provides a much more spacious development, much more opportunity for green planting, a buffer on this northern boundary, buffer along the southern boundary. There's some opportunities for some feature planting at the end to provide some interest as you come into site. Apologies. Buffer planting as you come into the site at the entrance, so the bin store for Carnival Court is moved across. Much larger area of public open space, not right on someone's doorstep. Reconfigured parking for Carnival Court with some visitor spaces. Each unit now has 2 parking spaces in tandem. There's now turning space for a refuse vehicle. So currently, the refuse vehicle has to park on Taunton Road to service the flats. But now for both the flats and the dwellings, a refuse vehicle can get into the site and turn. Because of the distances involved, this final section will be a short section of private drive. This section is a shared surface, and this section of Carnival Court will have a designated pavement along the southern entrance. So that's the intended layout for the 9 dwellings. Linear form, much more spacious than originally submitted. Looking at the design and the dwellings themselves, we've got 7 3-bed and 2 2-beds. So these are the 2-bed. Members will see it's quite a modern design. Won't be visible from the street scene, but internally should present quite a pleasing elevation. Interesting modern design. And then again, the 3-bed is slightly larger, as you could understand. And this sort of modern projecting bay element is 2-story, whereas it's single in the 2-bed units. And there is the suggested appearance, illustrative appearance of the 3-bed unit. Just briefly show you the street elevations. So Carnival Court on the left, plots 1 to 4, then the turning area for the refuse vehicle, and then extending through to up towards Ham Green Rise. This is the landscaping planting plan, which shows now much greater emphasis on buffer planting. Because the site is green at the moment, there's a need to sort of compensate for the loss of that green space in terms of biodiversity value, and that's what the revised scheme is intended to achieve. There is a condition 14 on landscaping, so notwithstanding all of this detail, we just want to make sure that that when the detail comes in, it maximises that biodiversity value. So in terms of the summary and recommendation, the proposal involves the loss of a non-publicly accessible green space, which is of local wildlife value. The site, though, is in a very well located, sustainable location close to Bridgewater Town Centre and the Taunton Road Neighbourhood Centre, and also to Morrison's. It gives rise to no severe highway impacts. Reduction from 15 to 9 dwellings secures a good design. Apologies for the spelling error there. Secures a good environment and opportunities for ecological mitigation, and it also safeguards the amenities of neighbours bordering the site. It's sufficiently distanced and there's plenty of room now for planting. Condition 16 will ensure appropriate energy measures to address climate change, and officers consider there's no other matters that can't be addressed via conditions. So the recommendation is to grant conditional planning permission. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
We have one speaker on this application, which is the applicant. Isaac, if you'd like to come forward to the speaker's table. Good morning. Just to remind you, you've got the 3 minutes to address the committee, and you'll see the time counting down on the clock. So start whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'm an independent planning advisor here in place of the planning consultant who unfortunately has a hospital appointment this morning. I am representing Arms Homes, one of the land promotions group who have built up a reputation for quality homes in the counties of the west of England. This application has been in gestation for some time, and I hasten to say that that's in no way any criticism of your officers, quite the reverse, in that they have been diligent, as have my clients, in working to achieve the best possible outcomes for this site. And subject to you granting consent today, I am sure, when completed, that you will be pleased to have been part of bringing this to fruition. Can I thank the officer for the updates and for the clarifications he made with regard to those outstanding confusions. The application, as you know, started out as 15 houses, i.e. the theoretical capacity of an urban site of this size. But having confirmed in principle the principle of development, that was then negotiated down to 9, and these have been positioned down the centre of the site to maximise the distances from the properties in the adjacent roads and making appropriate use of the available land. As a parish councillor myself, I do understand the concerns of residents and the threat of change that development brings. Of course, the site does have a wildlife value, but that value is severely inhibited by the lack of any green corridor or connection to any other wildlife areas in the vicinity. So in seeking to develop the site and to meet the concerns of your officers, the designs have carefully included significant native landscaping to the boundaries. This will complement the diverse habitat of surrounding gardens and add to the biodiversity overall. In a similar way, other concerns raised during the consultation period have each, I think, been well considered, and in each case an appropriate solution has been reached, as outlined in your officer's quite comprehensive report. I don't personally see any further concern that cannot be dealt with by waiver conditions, so I trust members that you will feel able to agree with me and grant your approval today. And thank you all for your time. I should be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to resume your seat, thank you. Any comments or questions? I've got Councillor Kingham as indicated first, so if you can get the microphones, Stuart. You're saying my mic's not working? Okay, is it now? Okay. Councillor Kingham.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think this development is improved vastly from what it was at 15, but as this was a greenfield site to the rear of the properties, has any habitat report been done on the site? Because obviously there's a number of existing buildings which would have housed wildlife, but I do not see any in the report anywhere.
Mr. Lloyd. Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so yeah, the application's accompanied by a preliminary ecological survey, and there's a number of species identified. For example, it's known that the badgers use the site, for example. So there are a number of conditions which would address that. I'm just checking through the report. Sorry, if you just bear with me.
Yeah, Mr. Rees.
So in terms of the preliminary ecological survey, there was also an ecological report and a covering letter that set out all the additional reports that were undertaken as part of the application. In terms of biodiversity enhancements and sort of what's being put in place to mitigate the impact on any sort of wildlife that was found on site, there's a number of conditions in the report in terms of bat mitigation, requirements for bat mitigation class licence for bat boxes, sparrow terraces, bird boxes, another bat box, landscaping schemes, lighting design for bats, landscape planting scheme and management is all covered by condition. And there is a condition as well for prior to commencement of works, a badger survey. So the badgers weren't an issue at the time that the surveys were undertaken, but because it's known that it could be an issue prior to construction, there needs to be a survey. The results of those survey would come to us with approval for whatever mitigation needs to go into place. So it is quite robustly covered in the conditions, but we did also get quite a lot of information up front in terms of considering the application, and the conditions that have been recommended have all come through county ecology. So SES, they're all recommended by the ecologist.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that's really comprehensive. Thanks, Dawn.
No problem at all. Councillor Kingham.
Yeah. So obviously now the application has been reduced down to this number of houses. Obviously, it's allowed for the environmental factors in the town. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillors Pearce and Councillor Hendry. So Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, I think as we saw from slide 1, this is a really verdant piece of green land in the midst of a really high density urban area of the town, with the A38 very, very close by. So I can really understand the concerns of the local residents at the potential of losing this, because it's just one more piece of green land that we are at risk of losing. And I noticed there's been talk of the ecology, but on page 77 of the report, it does say the site currently supports a range of flora and fauna, has a local level ecological value within an otherwise built-up environment, but the site does support bluebells, suitability for roosting bats, badger, dormouse, other mammals, nesting birds, reptiles, common terrestrial invertebrates. So locally, that is an important site, I would say, in terms of ecology. The sustainability of the site has been mentioned, and I can see that from the point of view of transport links. And it is good that the number of houses has been reduced from 15 to 9. But looking at the artist's impression, usually the artist's impression is quite attractive, but it just looks really concrete. And I can see where we look at the screen now, and it's completely green. The plans for the site pushes the green very much to the outer rim. And in terms of sustainability, it's really a shame, in my point of view, that it's not reflected, if there has to be a development here, that the design of the houses do not represent or reflect a more sustainable style of building in terms of environmental, solar capture, environmental measures. I don't know if there's anything about car charging within there. I think the officer mentioned that the current parking arrangements for Carnival Court were less than ideal. I'm sure that wasn't put to the planning committee when that development was passed, and yet here we are presented with another sort of a continuation of development of the site, which seems to me less than ideal. It could be better. If that has to be built on, it could be better to reflect the importance of the local greenery of the nature. And just one more point, I think in the report it refers to alternative parking arrangements will need to be made whilst the construction is underway. Well, I really don't know where that's going to be. Hamp Green Rise, Fernley Avenue, Southgate Avenue, Taunton Road, they're all pretty congested already. So I would be interested to know what the plans are for making those alternative arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd, are you able to address some of those issues?
Thank you, Chairman. There's a number of issues there. So first, in terms of the sustainability of the site, I mean, a lot of work has gone into the revision of the layout. So you can see with this, that there are now some significant planting buffers along the sort of the northern and the southern edges of the site. Obviously, towards the eastern end of the site, it's been softened as well. So I think, to be fair, the criticism of the existing arrangement is a fair criticism. It's a fairly harsh environment, that entrance, and so what we've done is we've worked with the developers to try to get some betterment at the front here, as well as making some provision for the green space, not just the public open space, but some opportunities for you'll see here, and at the end stop here, for some more strategic planting, because it is at the moment a very harsh environment, the entrance to that environment. In terms of the artist impressions, let me just. So what you'll see is that obviously towards the frontage, what you've got is a sort of shared surface area, but obviously what you can't see here is this would be the start of the planting buffer with Fernley Avenue. So internally, the environment will be a pretty good environment. I would suggest with plenty of opportunity for planting, which will help visually, but also obviously in terms of the ecology as well. What else could be better? Yeah, so just going back to the layout. Because of the nature of the site, a linear layout is really, you know, the only option for the development of the site. So if we go back to what was proposed originally, which was sort of quite a harsh environment, sort of kind of replicating the existing environment, I would say, but with very little open space and sort of minor areas of planting, and then everything else within sort of private back gardens. And so working with the applicants, what we've sought to do is to improve on that existing environment, as well as providing an amenity for existing and proposed residents, and as a general amenity, it's a wider public open space as well. But also in terms of these planting around the site, it's visual at the front. Obviously at the back this isn't visual, but it does help with that sort of ecological compensation. Yeah, I understand the concerns, but officers consider this, you know, does offer a good quality backland environment, I would say. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I've covered all of your issues, Councillor Pearce, but remind me if I've missed something.
Just one thing, Mr. Lloyd, if I could ask, there was the issue raised about alternative parking during construction. Would that be something that we've had notification of already, or is that something that would be part of a construction management plan, or?
Yeah, apologies, Chairman, I forgot that. Yes, so it would be part of a construction and environment management plan. So, you know, appreciably, the inconvenience, particularly for the existing residents of Carnival Court, but also, you know, the nearby neighbours as well. And so, yeah, as part of the construction environment management plan, it's required to come forward with a proposal for that.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, did you want to come back, or Councillor Hendry? Okay, Councillor Hendry.
I'm not trying to push in, you're okay. Morning, Mr. Chairman, councillors. A few things noticed about this, which are actually all good, no problem. The highways are on board, which I always consider that a really good thing straight away for access, etc. So that's good. 15 down to 9 is still over 8 properties, so we do need a council's play area, which has been taken care of by the way of the 106. The houses themselves, the original houses which are there in situ either side already, it's their back gardens all lead down to this. So there's a fair distance between the new ones and the ones that are there in situ at the moment, which again is actually all good. The design of the houses, according to what's been shown on there, are really nice too. Very, very good, very upmarket. All in, I've actually looked at all this. I've been through it myself with a fine-tooth comb. Can't find any major problem actually to speak of and say against it. On the basis of everything I said, I would like to propose the case officer's recommendation to grant permission. Thank you.
Okay, and that's with the amended conditions. Okay, Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. It was, could we go back to the slide that was there before, please? It's just a question around overlooking and concerns about overlooking for the residents of Hamp Green Rise. The report mentions there's a slight gradient on the land. So Fernley is slightly higher than this site, and this site, I think, is slightly higher than Hamp Green Rise. If the officer could give some explanation of that, please.
Mr. Lloyd.
Yep. So as Councillor Pearce rightly says, there's a fall from north to south, and the sort of habitable room to habitable room distance, recommended distance, you know, it's of the order of 20-21 meters as being a good distance. All of these properties are well in excess of that distance, habitable room to habitable room distances. I think those distances are detailed in the report, but you know, in excess of what we would consider to be a good standard at 20 to 21 metres.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Evans, can we pass the microphone up? Councillor Kingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed a typo on the last slide that this was a God design. I'm sure the Almighty might have done a better job, but I'm sure this is adequate. I'm wondering we just have clarification on the explanation for the play area adoption. I didn't get the headline at the end. Is this play area adoptable or not?
Mr. Lloyd.
Yep. Sorry, Councillor. I did refer to that typo. I do apologise for that. And yeah, it's intended to be adoptable. You know, it's to adoptable standards. Yeah, provided there's no underground storage, you know, the usual requirements, then yes, it's capable of adoption.
Thank you. When I read through the officer's comments and yours, I just didn't quite get to the end point of is it adoptable or isn't, so, which I wasn't clear on. And I wasn't clear from the report whether the roads will be a standard where they can be adoptable. I appreciate that's not a limiting factor.
Mr. Lloyd.
Yep. So again, you know, that would be covered under Section 38 of the Highways Act. So yeah, they can be put forward for adoption, and if they meet the highways requirements, which obviously would mean, you know, not having suds under the public open space and stuff like that, then yeah, it's capable of adoption, and that would be a matter between the developer and the highway authority under Section 38.
Just to confirm, Mr. Lloyd, in terms of that, the final three houses in the close, I think you said earlier that sort of area that's in the light grey wouldn't be adopted.
I think in terms of Section 38, I think it's possible that it can be adopted, but it's unlikely, I'd say. So yeah, almost certainly, if they're seeking adoption, the adopted public area would probably be at the end of that last three houses. So the refuse vehicle turning within the shared surface area would all be part of the adoption, but the last three would likely be served off a private drive.
Okay, better experience tells me it's better to resist unadoptable bits of highway, and I hope we can do that. My last point, I'm interested to see the comments of the affordable housing officer on page 58. This site overall, the Hope Inn site, is obviously 22 units at the Carnival Court and 9 units here. So that makes a total of 31. Would that total of 31 still be policy compliant? Is this not a bit of salami slicing here in order to avoid providing the affordable housing the policy requires?
So I understand that point, Councillor Evans. The applicant didn't own the land at the rear when they got planning permission for Carnival Court, so that was determined on its own merits. So clearly, if land was within the ownership of an applicant and they were effectively, you know, salami slicing it to avoid affordable housing, we're wise to that. But that's not the case in this instance. Obviously, when it was 15, it would have fallen under a requirement for affordable housing provision. But you know, if we go back to that layout for 15, it's not something that as a planning authority we felt that we could support. And you know, in terms of the negotiating down to get what we think is an acceptable environment, a good environment, which meets the open space requirements and provides, you know, decent replacement parking for Carnival Court, and actually improves things for Carnival Court in terms of the you know, the buffer planting at the site frontage and so on. It does reduce it down to 9, which means it's not affordable housing isn't a requirement. So I think that's the balance. You know, you could squeeze more houses on there and get a couple of affordable, but you know, I think in terms of the balance of considerations, this is preferable.
Thank you very much for your responses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kingham.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to go along with the fact that the work that's been put in between the officers and the client, improvement to the design and the layout, etc., and the various conditions, I would like to second the recommendation.
Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Scott. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Much has been said about parking to do with the flats that are being slightly organised. Unfortunately, I can't see, but where are the parking for the houses going to be?
So
Is there adequate vision?
yeah, so if you see very sort of slightly dotted underneath the roadway is the existing parking for Carnival Court flats, and then in bold is the new proposed parking for Carnival Court flats. There's some visitor parking here, and then each property has 2 spaces at its side in tandem. So every property has 2 parking spaces in tandem at the side. Is that clear, Councillor Scott?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm not. Yes, I am. Councillor Betty.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just going back on from Councillor Evans's comments about the adoption of the roads. On bottom of page 49 and 50 of the officer's report, from the highways, from county highways, it says that it would not be considered for adoption for many different reasons, not just for the road, but for the parking bays. But from the officer, I was understanding that they could push for adoption, but from the actual highways comments, that doesn't seem the case.
Yeah, I think those comments related to the original layout. That was the original layout, and those comments were made in relation to that. My understanding is that the revised layout has a better possibility of adoption, but clearly if whether or not it's adopted is a separate matter under the Highways Act. But yeah, it's in terms of the possibility of adoption, Highways have confirmed that they will adopt shared surfaces in principle. So it's a matter of the applicants applying under section 38 to see if they can get that adopted.
Thank you. Not seeing any further questions or comments, so we have a recommendation that's been moved and seconded to grant permission with the amended conditions. All those in support, please show. You got that? And those against, please show. I believe that's all members voted. That's clearly carried, so permission is granted. It's 13 for, 1 against, and no abstentions. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. If members turn in to the next application where we have a speaker present, that's on page 88. And we're in Liberty Place. And I think, is it Mr. Titchener who's presenting? Yep, we've got the cover sheet now.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the demolition of some existing outbuildings within a residential plot at 17 Liberty Place in Bridgewater, and for the subsequent erection of 3 dwellings. The application is before members today because of the objection of Bridgewater Town Council. So just to orient where we are, fairly central location in Bridgewater. So the site is here, and I'll zoom in a second. So this is sort of the Western Zoyland Road, St John Street, running up here to the north of the site. And then outlined in red here is the application site. So it's part of a large plot associated with this existing dwelling here known as Chubb's Cottage. So it has quite a bit of land to the fore and to the side. So we are in obviously in Bridgewater, our main sort of location for development within the district. It's within the settlement boundary, so where the principal development is obviously acceptable. So just some photographs just to get a sense of the site currently. So this is the existing property, Chubb's Cottage, within a sort of large plot with most of the land laid situated to the foreground of the dwelling. And then the lower photo just showing quite the extensive plot, which sort of wraps around sort of the side of the dwelling as well in a kind of spur heading off towards here, where it adjoins a plot that contains some garages in use by nearby residential properties. Again, some photographs of the internal parts of the plot. So you can see this picture's looking directly east. Some of the buildings that are here to be demolished. Beyond them is a boundary and some existing properties on Mill Close, the rear of which we see here. And I'll talk about the relationship with those in due course. And then this lower photograph looking sort of stood towards the back of this sort of spur, this sort of hardcored area to the east of the property, looking towards its sort of side and gable end. To the west, there's quite a large pond, sort of a local sort of public feature. And as I stated, the dwelling itself is actually quite deeply set within the plot. There's existing fencing along its southern boundary, and it's accessed via its southern boundary. So it's not a property that actually makes much of a contribution to the local street scene, being relatively hidden away. This is an image of the existing street scene. So this is the end of Mallard Way. So that's sort of taken from here near the actual entrance, but looking back down south towards the types of properties and the layout of the estate. So it's a sort of typical housing sort of estate design, sort of 1980s, 1990s style of property. And we're at the end of a part of a no-through road that leads up to the boundary of the site. So this is the layout that's proposed. So it's 3 dwellings. They're proposed to be done as a semi-detached pair here which would front onto the street scene, so looking south. And then in this spur here, a bungalow, a detached bungalow. So the town council had expressed concern about sort of overdevelopment of the site. The scheme density is actually about 26 dwellings per hectare. It's often lower than what would usually be sort of quite often delivered in Bridgewater, where levels about 35 dwellings per hectare is not uncommon. So it's not considered to be an overly dense, in our view, form of development. This is the pair to be proposed at the front, looking onto the street scene. So they are to be finished with brick under a tiled roof. Now, the form and the design and the height of these is taking its cues from existing development within that estate. It's trying to pick up on those. They've been positioned so that they have like an active frontage, so that they sort of form almost a little extension to the street scene, so they engage the street scene rather than perhaps turning their back on them. So it's a materials palette and sort of design styles that is reflective of what's available in the local area. They're laid out to be 3-bedroom properties internally with integral garages and sort of gardens behind. This is the bungalow that's proposed at the rear of the site. Its orientation on a sort of east-west position has been chosen to sort of mirror the sort of footprint and positioning of Chubb's Cottage. That's changed through the course of the application. I'll just come on to that in a bit. This is this property is particularly in a backland position within the plot, so it will not be widely visible. Nonetheless, the materials we would consider to be commensurate with the materials palette that's used within the local area. Again, it's a 3-bedroom property, 1 bedroom is downstairs, 2 up within the loft space. In terms of sort of the amenity impacts and the relationship with nearby properties, so we have the existing dwelling, Chubbs Cottage, and the need to achieve an acceptable relationship with that, and also these properties which are side on Merle Close in proximity to the site. I mean, we would consider that an acceptable relationship between the proposed and existing dwellings has been achieved by positioning these proposed dwellings at sufficient distance to minimise any overlooking or loss of privacy. They are sort of turned 90 degrees as well, so that their windows are facing front and back rather than side on, so that there's no overlooking or impacts between their relationship and those on Merle Close. The distance to from the rear windows here to the front of Chubbs Cottage is 19 metres from plots 2 and 3, which we would consider to be broadly consistent with acceptable separation distances. There is a row of tall and narrow trees proposed as planting as part of the scheme, which we would secure via condition to provide some separation and some filtering of views between those two properties, and just generally to increase the sort of sense of privacy and separation between the two. I just want to show this slide because this shows the scheme as was actually submitted originally before amendments were secured. So this show, and the amendments were in relation to sort of plot 1. So it wasn't originally proposed as a bungalow; it was actually proposed as a 2-storey property, or oriented at a bit of an angle, sort of to try and direct its views in this sort of southwesterly direction and try to avoid any overlooking impacts of those properties on Merle Close. But actually, windows to the front would have still had sort of oblique views across the back of these properties, and to a level that we didn't feel was going to be acceptable in terms of its impact on these residents. So that's something that we said we didn't feel was going to be acceptable, and that's why we asked for a bungalow to be put in that location instead. So if I come on to this, which would not result in any overlooking of those gardens on Merle Close. There are only roof, even though there is accommodation in the roof, that's in the loft space, so roof lights generally give upwards views and not over those adjoining gardens. Our proposal would be to remove permitted development rights so that other windows could not be added in future without the need for a planning application. We would consider that all of the dwellings are suitably proportioned and have the benefit of private outdoor space. Environmental health wanted some controls over the hours of operation, dust, and sort of no controls over burning on site during the construction period, which we would secure through the imposition of a condition for a construction management plan. Overall, with the conditions, we would consider the scheme to be acceptable on amenity grounds. Just in terms of access and parking, so I mentioned the existing access from Mallard Way into the site. So this is the existing fencing that currently delineates the boundary. So this is a no-through road. It leads up to the edge of the site and then onto the property beyond. So an internal access road would be created through the site, leading to Chubbs Cottage, leading to plot 1, and leading to these properties. The fencing along the front would be removed. Concern had been expressed locally about the impact of traffic generation. Properties of this nature would be expected to generate between 6 and 8 vehicle movements per day. Given the relatively central Bridgewater location, it's not considered that this level of vehicle generation is going to have a significant impact on the operation and the function of the local highway network. In terms of parking provision, that was a matter of concern to the Town Council about the level of provision. Standing advice for Bridgewater would require each dwelling to be served with 2 parking spaces. And that requirement is met for all properties, and that is in the form of 2 on-plot spaces here for plot 1, and in the case of plots 2 and 3, 1 space to the front and 1 garage space. that would ensure compliance with county standing advice. We would impose conditions that parking turning areas within the site would be subject to conditions to control their use for that purpose only. But overall, the scheme would be considered to be compliant with local plan policies on highways and highways standing advice. The proposal site is within flood zone 3A, which is obviously an area of high flood risk. It's a designation which covers more than half of Bridgewater. The local plan states residential development within flood zone 3 is acceptable in principle within Bridgewater, but to ensure compliance with Environment Agency standing advice, the proposal is it is within an area that has been modelled to be subject to, with no potential breach scenarios under our strategic flood risk assessment. There is second floor place of refuge in all three of the properties proposed, and finished floor levels are at least 300 mil above existing ground levels. An informative would be attached advising of best practice preparation of a flood emergency plan. And overall, the scheme is considered to comply with the relevant flood tests set out in the local and national policy. And just to come on to ecology, so the photo there shows the pond immediately adjoining. There was an ecological appraisal submitted with the application that made various recommendations to mitigate ecological impacts associated with the proposal, including during the construction period. So part of that impact relates to the protection of the adjoining pond, which does offer some habitat for protected species. The appraisal was assessed by the county ecologist, who does not object, and recommended conditions only. So those conditions would cover submission of a construction and environmental management plan. So that would manage the impacts on ecology during the construction period, submission of a sensitive lighting scheme, and the installation of biodiversity enhancements and bat and bird boxes. So subject to those controls, the scheme is considered to put forward appropriate mitigation and is acceptable on ecological grounds. And then just briefly, just by way of an update, so condition 3, which relates to a construction environmental management plan, just want to tweak the wording slightly just to make it clearer that the first 5 bullet points relate to ecology, but the other points relate to environmental health. So we've kind of combined, it has a combined function, that condition, in terms of protecting residents in terms of no burning, no waste, but also achieving controls on ecology. And we just want to make that absolutely clear. The first bullet points are about ecology. So in summary, and our recommendation, we would consider this makes effective use of land in a fairly central Bridgewater location. It's design which can be suitably accommodated in the street scene. And we don't feel that there are any other matters which cannot be addressed by conditions, and therefore our recommendation is to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, we have a speaker on this application. So Laura Polly, if you'd like to come forward. Good morning again. You'll see the time on the clock. Start whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. On behalf of my client, I'm here to speak in support of the proposed development. Our proposal is for the demolition of the existing outbuildings and the construction of 3 new dwellings. Each property would provide 3 bedrooms, private garden areas, landscaping and allocated parking spaces. This proposal follows positive pre-application discussions with the local planning authority. As highlighted in the planning officer's report, the proposed development is within the settlement limits for Bridgewater. The Sedgemoor local plan confirms that Bridgewater is the principal town in the district. The strategic policies within the plan seek to direct new development towards the most sustainable locations, such as our client's site. Table 4.6 of the local plan strives to maximise development opportunities within the existing urban area through appropriate infill and redevelopment opportunities. We believe that our proposal meets these objectives. The proposed development is therefore considered to be supported in principle as it accords with the settlement strategy as set out within the local plan. The site layout proposes a pair of semi-detached houses and a detached bungalow. The Town Council's concerns regarding the density of the development are noted, but we feel that the proposed layout represents a good use of land which is reflective of the local character. The proposed development density is consistent with that to be expected in an urban area. The proposals have been amended to account for feedback received during the life of the application, and the planning officer now comments that the relationship between the existing and the proposed dwellings are acceptable. The proposal is considered to meet the county parking standards by providing 2 spaces for each dwelling, whilst retaining sufficient parking spaces for the original dwelling. The surrounding approach roads are considered to be appropriate to accommodate this modest increase in traffic associated with the development of 3 new homes. The site is within comfortable walking and cycling distance of the town centre. In summary, the proposals make good use of land within a sustainable location. The proposals have been amended to address concerns raised and now benefits from the planning officer's support. There are no technical objections to the proposed development, and the proposal is considered to meet the local planning policy requirements and the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework. The proposal constitutes a sustainable form of development in a highly sustainable location, and I therefore respectfully request that planning permission is granted for the proposed development of 3 new dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any comments or questions, please? Yes, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't got a problem with this application. I think it's actually using land that's available. I noticed that there are specific mention of like bird boxes and things. We had an application where there were swift boxes mentioned. Being near a water feature, swifts and probably barn swallows would be seen there. I just wonder if we could add that as an application.
Titchener.
So condition 5 is the relevant condition at the moment. What has been, this is what has been requested by the county ecologist, is that they've asked for sparrow terrace or similar, and they have specified a type. So we've been guided by their specific advice on this. I mean, we are talking about enhancements, and so I think it's not unusual to get requests for things like swift boxes either. If members felt the need to give the option for a sparrow terrace or swift box, I don't think there would be any objection from the county ecologist to enable us to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question from me. We were told that all 3 properties have a first floor flood refuge. Does that include the bungalow?
Titchener.
So, sorry, did you say, does that apply to the bungalow?
Yeah, I'm just imagining the bungalow with the first floor.
Well, it's a dorm. It is a dormer bungalow.
It's a dormer arrangement.
It is a dormer.
And so are we confident with the overlooking issue with the residences on Mel Close?
Yes, because what we've done is removed, so there are no windows on that self-facing roof slope from the bungalow, so they will have no view. The occupants of that bungalow will not have any windows that look towards Mill Close up in the loft. So any roof lights that serve the upper accommodation of that are all on the north slope, so they're directed away from Mill Close. So the residents of Mill Close, I think the effects that they will notice is an apex of roof over the fence line, but it offers no overlooking whatsoever. And to secure that in perpetuity, we've removed permitted development rights so that the future occupants could not just go in and use PD rights to put in a dormer window, new roof lights, without having to come to us to ask for it, at which point we would say that's not something we could support.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Can I ask, does that include any amendments on the swift boxes, or
they can have whatever bird boxes they like, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much.
Councillor Perry.
Yes, thank you. Can you just clarify exactly where the access is coming out from onto the main highway? I've seen where they're going to create a new one, but where is it originally going to come out from? Can you just clarify?
I mean, at a very sort of zoomed in level, there is, this is the end of Mallard Way here, and that connects, actually, the base plan is actually slightly out of date because there is actually already a sort of tarmac connection up to the boundary of the site here. I think the photo that I showed with the fence paneling shows the connection there. So that's how the internal roadway links to the wider road network, and then that wider road network has a number of points where it connects into sort sort of the Bridgewater network as it is. You can go out towards Colley Lane, you can go out towards St John Street. So there's various options for local residents once driving beyond the site to get into other parts of the town. Do you want me to put up the photograph with the fencing just to show the point of connection? I certainly can.
Probably the wider picture of where the actual back further, I think, the street scene a bit further back. There.
So if I just get to, this is the point of connection onto Mallard Way here, which connects into the site there. And then, as I stated, it's a no-through road at the end of of an existing cul-de-sac. But then any residents leaving there have a variety of options about how they then travel and get into other parts of Bridgewater. This way leads east and connects to Western Zoyland Road. That way leads west and comes out through part of the Colley Lane estate.
Okay. I saw a hand to my right and I wasn't sure it was Councillor Bolt or Councillor Kingham. It was Councillor Kingham. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
I think you want to turn it upside down.
There's always one in there. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's good to see that not like all the houses that are built these days, we've got a bit of character into these properties. They've got some chimneys on, although a lot of the houses in the area don't. But it's good to see that we've got some character, and I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you.
The right way around.
No worries. Councillor Hendry, you indicated? No, that's fine. Not seeing any other comments, so just to confirm, Mr. Titchener, in terms of the bird boxes, are we in effect opening it just to say that it's to be agreed with ecology as to which is the most appropriate?
I can amend the wording of the condition so that they can submit details of the bird and bat boxes, and if that is more preferable to members, or I can amend the wording of it just to make it more flexible to say sparrow or swift boxes, and that gives the applicant the option just to go with what they consider to be most suitable.
Councillor Evans and Councillor King, are you happy with that alteration of the wording as outlined? Happy with that then? Okay, so that's the either or. Okay. Members, you've had the recommendation to grant permission moved and seconded with the amended conditions. Those in favour, please show. That would appear to be unanimous. Yep, that's everybody, so that's clearly carried. Right, members, if you turn to page 104, and we move to East Brent. And Mr. Evans, I think you're presenting this one. Close this one.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. This reserve matters application follows an outline consent that was granted in December of last year for the erection of up to 5 dwellings in East Brent. The site is highlighted by the indicator here. The site is to the rear of the Laurels, which is a detached property, and is accessed via a gated entrance from Old Bristol Road. There's also a garage belonging to the property. The rear land on which the application relates is surrounded by trees and is lined by a couple of reens. So members may recall the application site from December. The red line area indicates where the proposed dwellings will be located, consistent with the outline application. And the Laurels is the existing property here. At the outline stage, approval was given for the access point into the site, which was from Old Bristol Road along the east elevation of the dwelling known as the Laurels, between its existing garage. So the application will involve the demolition of a cladded building here, and the access will come into the site to serve the proposed development. So these were the plans submitted with the application. And the proposal for the reserve matters is consistent with the layout that was indicative at the time of the outline permission. So we have the access point coming here into the site with a turning head at the top, providing access for the dwellings, which would provide parking spaces and garages for each of the plots. This is the proposed layout now proposed at the reserve matters stage. So we're dealing with the layout and appearance of the development as submitted. We have 5 dwellings, 3 of which are located on the west side of the site and 2 located on the east side. Each of the dwellings will have an external parking area for 2 spaces. 4 of the dwellings will include an external garage located on the side elevation, with one dwelling E, with containing an integral garage at ground floor level. As part of the layout plan, the applicants have sought to provide a buffer zone to the existing greens along the northeast boundary of the site and to the south, which is where the existing green goes along the south boundary between the laurels and the application site. The access itself will be culverted to allow access across it. Following on from the layout plan, this is a copy of the drainage plan as submitted by the applicants, just to show the measures that are proposed as part of the layout of the development. So we have 2 attenuation tanks serving the development, catching the rainwater from the roofs and parking areas and the hard standing areas that are proposed. This will feed into the adjoining green and provide mitigation in terms of surface water drainage management. The application is also proposing a foul sewage connection, which was raised as a concern by the parish council. The applicants have undertaken a survey of the existing network and have confirmed that they can connect to the existing main sewers network within East Brent, and this has received no objection from Wessex Water. So as part of the application, this is an indication of the street scenes from within the site as viewed from the shared access road. So we have 2-storey dwellings located on both sides of the access road. With, as I said, we have attached dwellings to the side elevations, providing space between the proposed 2-storey dwellings. One of the dwellings, plot E, will contain the integral garage as shown here. Following on from the initial submission of the plans, the applicants have reduced the height of the dwellings' roofs by approximately 1.5 metres, following concerns regarding overshadowing and visual domination. This is the elevation showing the design of the 4 of the dwellings. So this shows the pitched roof development, which shows a gable elevation of 2 stories at the front of the property, breaking up the overall massing of the building. The dwellings themselves will be clad in a combination of render and anthracite cladding above, with concrete interlocking tiles to the roof. This will be consistent throughout the development. This is plot E, which again has the integral garage, but will follow a similar pattern in terms of the overall layout of the development. So we have the render and cladding providing a horizontal emphasis to the overall scale of the development. So if this is a view taken from the proposed access point, so this building will be removed from the site to provide access alongside the laurels into the plot, which will allow the access for the 5 dwellings as proposed. This is a view taken from Strolands alongside from the highway. So this is a access point into that allows maintenance for the ring here. And on the left-hand side here, we have one of the bungalows within Strolands, which, as you can see, is of a similar nature in terms of its external materials, with the materials being concrete tiles and render. With regards to the appearance and scale of the development, it's considered that based upon the background location of the site, that the choice of materials is considered acceptable. The character of the area has no regimented appearance in terms of external elevations, materials, or design. The majority of properties within the area are 2 stories, with the properties along Strolands, the exception being single-story bungalows. There are a few properties further afield within Old Bristol Road to the east, which are also bungalows, but it's considered within the context of the immediate site that the proposed design, materials and scale of the dwellings as submitted would be acceptable within this location of East Brent. Moving further into the site, this is just to give you a view of what is currently there. There were a number of photographs provided within the presentation at the outline stage in December. The site in itself has not changed apart from the existing property, the Laurels, currently undergoing renovation works, currently being refurbished. So in terms of the overall appearance of the site, this remains consistent with what was presented in December. So in terms of the overall pattern of development in the area, we have the Laurels here, which will be retained, garden space, which is lined with a fencing boundary, will be kept for the Laurels, as well as the parking area to the front and the garage to the side. Westfield, which is one of the closest properties to the site, you can just see in the background beyond there. This property is approximately 18 metres away from the closest dwelling, which is plot E. We'll go through that in a minute. So this is the east boundary of this site. As you can see, a number of trees have been retained as part of the works that have been ongoing in terms of the clearance. These are proposed to be retained as an integral part of the development to provide both screening and also aid in the biodiversity retention within the site itself. So as part of the outline consent, there was a landscaping condition requiring plans to be submitted in terms of additional planting and those trees to be retained. So it is felt that this will be integral to the overall development in terms of its reducing its impact on the surrounding area. This is a view taken of the west boundary towards the properties within Strowlands. As you can see, it's fairly densely planted as it is now. The intention is to cut the trees, trim the trees at the top to allow them to further grow and provide further landscaping protection around the boundaries to integrate the development with the overall visual appearance of the village. This is a view taken from within the site back towards Strowlands along here with the green on the left-hand side, as you can see it beyond the landscaping here. And this is a view taken back towards the southeast, towards Westfield, which is here, which is one of the properties which had raised concerns during the course of the planning application. As part of the outline consent, there was a condition to require further planting along the shared boundaries with properties along Old Bristol Road, this being one of them. And it's felt that based upon the layout of the site, that further landscaping could be provided that would not be compromised by the layout and position of the proposed dwellings as shown now on the confirmed layout plan. This is a view towards the north, towards properties within Orchard Close. Again, the obscure angles that are provided by the proposed dwellings and the distances provided, it's not considered that there will be a significant impact on residential amenity based on the distances that we have within the site to the nearest properties. The properties along Strowlands are in excess of 30 metres away from the proposed dwellings, while the properties within Orchard Close are closer. It is considered that based upon the landscaping that's provided and to be retained, as well as the angles with which the windows are positioned on the rear, the plans themselves show bathroom windows being located closer to residential neighbouring properties than bedroom windows, with the properties being two-storey and providing safe refuge for the high-risk flood zone. We've tried to strike a balance between the provision of flood refuge and the impact on residential amenity. And it's considered that based upon the plans provided and providing the obscure windows closer to those residential properties, that this should negate any overlooking or detrimental impact on privacy. This is another view taken back towards the properties within Strowlands, and on the left-hand side you can see the newer built properties on Old Bristol Road. As part of the design submitted, these have been referenced in terms of the design ethos of the development. As you can see, they have steeply pitched roofs with render, although the tiles themselves are different. This just goes to show that there is a number of different palettes within the area which contribute to a varied style of street scenes within the immediate vicinity of the site. This is a further view of the boundary towards Stroland. Again, the single-storey properties that are located on that street. And again, there are opportunities here to retain and supplement this existing landscaping to integrate the development. This is a view taken back towards the Laurels. Again, you can see the existing boundary that's being provided for that property. These trees that are present to the south of the site and to the north of the Laurels will be retained as well. Like I say, there are a number of trees on site that will be retained as part of this development, and it's good to see that there will be a visual integration with the overall appearance of the area. This is a more open view towards those properties that are on Old Bristol Road, which have been more recently constructed in comparison with the other properties nearby. And just as a way of comparison between the proposed dwellings and the scale and height of these proposals, there are a number of properties within the area which are 2 stories, and the proposed dwellings themselves are much lower than the existing that are nearby. I believe these are about 8.5 to the ridge in terms of height, whereas the proposed dwellings themselves within this scheme are about 7.2. So there's a degree of comparability between the 2 existing and proposed examples. So this is a view taken from Strolands from Google Street View. As you can see, there are a number of single-storey residential properties within the area, with the trees beyond this property here representing the west boundary of the application site. You can just about see the roof lines of the newer properties on Old Bristol Road here. Just to give you an idea of the context of the area and the varying degrees of height and massing of dwellings nearby. Based upon the varied nature of the existing built environment, it's considered the development itself is appropriate for the location of the site and would not result in a detrimental impact on the character of any street scene or the wider area. So, in terms of the overall development itself, it's considered that the density of the development is consistent with that provided at the outline stage, and the development itself in terms of design, layout, and appearance would be successful in terms of its integration with the surrounding area. Its setting back from the street scene will not impact upon the appearance significantly of Old Bristol Road. And while there will be glimpses through from points within Strolands or Old Bristol Road itself via the proposed access, there would not be a significant impact on the overall appearance of the street scene or the surrounding area. The access itself is to remain private in terms of its adoptability. While it will be provided to a adoptable standard, the intention is for a management company to be maintained in terms of providing the road as well as the maintenance of the greens surrounding the site in the interests of providing suitable drainage. To date, the greens themselves have not been maintained, and due to ongoing maintenance works that have been ongoing since the site has been cleared, this has improved the situation within the site, and it's considered that the drainage plan as provided would continue this work. Therefore, in summary, it's considered that the development itself, located in a Tier 3 settlement, would be appropriate in terms of scale, design, and appearance, and would not have a significant impact on the amenity of nearby properties. Therefore, the recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Again, you'll see we have a speaker. Thea Michael, if you'd like to come forward, please. Again, good morning. You'll see the time on the clock. Start whenever you're ready to go, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I've come today to outline the key details of our application at the Laurels. As you're aware, the proposals are for an additional 5 dwellings. This site would comfortably accommodate these dwellings whose scale, massing and proportions are sympathetic to their surroundings. The proposed block plan is in keeping with the block plan provided within our approved outline application, with the exception of dwelling E, which is now smaller. The proposed ground floor gross areas of units A, B, C and D, including their garages, are actually less than the existing Laurels ground floor. And Unit E, with its integral garage, has a yet smaller gross area and is comparable to the new build dwellings next to the Laurels. The dwellings have been designed to have standard eaves heights comparable to the surrounding houses. Following conversations with the planning officer, as he mentioned, we have reduced the proposed ridge heights, which were in keeping with the surroundings, by 1.5 metres, so that now the ridge heights and roof pitches are far lower than the existing two-storey building stock. Our use of wall cladding in parts of the proposals matches the current rear of the Laurels. Now renovations have been completed. And as mentioned, the area doesn't really have a style in terms of house styles and sizes. And we felt that providing houses that added to this mix would further enhance the area, especially as due to the position of the site, away from the main road and in its own private lane, the proposals will not actually be visually read against the existing housing stock and street scene. Proposed access has been designed by an experienced highways consultant, and all sight lines and visibility displays conform to prevailing standards. Prior to submission, we consulted with Somerset Waste Management, who confirmed that they are happy to enter the site to collect waste from outside these dwellings based on the specs of the roads provided. We've made safe the asbestos lined green by already installing a culvert pipe, as discussed and approved previously by the Internal Drainage Board. We've also confirmed with the culvert manufacturers that the submitted road spec can be laid over this culvert based on its existing depth on site. It is our intention to obtain the perimeter trees as detailed in the arboricultural method statement, including 2 trees at the rear of the Laurels. We've ensured that the permitted distances within planning guidance to neighbouring windows is adhered to. And we've also ensured that opaque windows are to the nearest point towards existing dwellings. And these 2 points ensure that the privacy of existing neighbours and future owners of these dwellings are met. We've designed the proposed attenuation tank specifically not to encroach on any root protection areas.
I'll have to call time on you there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Henry, you indicated first.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get something up on the screen there. The house called Westfield, do we know which one that is? Which property on the screen there then? Westfield?
Just indicated by the arrow there.
Right, oh, okay, all right, okay. We had a letter circulated, I'm sure everybody's had it, about this, the owners of the house called Westfield. And they're saying that the plot number E is 7 metres from their boundary fence. Does that sound about right?
So the unfortunately I can't measure on this plan.
No, but okay, somebody has obviously, but they're.
I was just going to say, in terms of distance, there's a 6 metre buffer from the other side of the land drain. So the little white strip is the land drain. The hatched green area is a 6 metre buffer.
Right.
And then there's 2 parking spaces. So parking spaces are usually, was it 2.4? So you're looking at sort of 8.5 probably.
Okay. They've stated it was 7 metres. So according to that there, the house Westfield is actually even further forward away from their boundary. So there's some distance all in all. It's not just all it seems. There's the house Westfield, if I'm looking at that right there, is almost fronting onto the road. And then there's a gap between the back of the house and the boundary. Then there's the ring, and then there's a gap between there and the existing property. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. Okay, that's fine. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Facey.
Thanks, Chairman. I think it's quite straightforward, actually. They've obviously, developers have listened to the officers, vice versa. I think it's going to tidy up part of the village, in my own view. I would like to propose that we grant approval on reserve matters along with all the bits and pieces that go with it, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce. Oh, hold on 1 minute, just 1 moment.
Chairman, it's put to members that maybe we could add an extra condition regarding the existing trees on site. I've obviously referred to them quite a bit, and I don't believe that the landscaping condition that was initially applied at the outline stage included plans for root protection areas for those existing trees. So it may be prudent to add an extra condition requiring a plan and the implementation of root protection areas for the existing trees before the works commence, and then to maintain them while they're ongoing on site.
Chairman, I'm happy to take the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think this scheme looks quite a sensitive development in terms of the location. And I mean, it's a shame the speaker was cut off just when he started talking about the attenuation tanks, because that was that was the bit I was interested in particularly. My only concerns, I guess, are around the close proximity of the Reens to this, and it was mentioned that to date, I think they hadn't been maintained so well, but this development was sort of addressing that. It's just a shame, I think, in developments such as this, that there's not more attention paid to, in terms of the upkeep of the house, in terms of rainwater capture, use of grey water, etc., for the ongoing use of the houses. But as we have no comments from the Drainage Board and the Environment Agency haven't raised any objections, I suppose we have to accept that all those things have been taken into account. So thank you. If it hasn't been seconded, I will. Has it been?
It hasn't yet.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, do you want to comment on any of?
Well, I've just put the plan up for the attenuation and the drainage works that are being proposed. So we have the large attenuation tank, which incidentally is outside the root protection areas of those trees along that boundary. It's been designed as such to step back into the site to allow those trees to be maintained. There's also a smaller attenuation tank to serve these two properties here, all of which will sort of reduce the rate of flow into the adjoining watercourse. The plans that have been submitted do indicate by the dark green hatched areas that there will be maintenance strips provided within the site for the existing Reens, both to the north and south. So in terms of the overall development, there will be an improvement in terms of accessibility and providing maintenance margins to get access to those and maintain those Reens and ditches, because at the moment I believe that they're not being maintained regularly, or they weren't maintained under the previous ownership.
Thank you. Could I raise a couple of questions, if I might? And it relates to, obviously, we had this outline come to us as you reported at the one of our earlier meetings. One of the issues that was raised was obviously that it was amended from 5 dwellings to up to 5 because we wanted to be convinced that 5 would fit. And there was an additional condition put on about the landscaping, particularly in the southeast corner, relating to the dwellings on Old Bristol Road. You've shown us on that plan that's up at the moment that there is a buffer zone for maintenance of the Reen. How do you put landscaping in that southeast corner if you have a buffer zone and then you're straight onto the parking areas?
Well, we don't have a detailed landscaping scheme yet in terms of what we would expect. There's still a condition to be addressed on the as part of the outline. I believe, you know, we can negotiate a suitable degree of landscaping within that corner to ensure that the properties along Old Bristol Road are because that was one of the points raised at that meeting, was the fact that we wanted to see additional landscaping along that. I mean, in terms of the layout plan that we have now, there is obviously the buffer zone to the north of the site, and I believe that while that is not necessarily a requirement, because I believe the property, the boundaries are maintained, sorry, the Reens are maintained on a riparian basis, so that they're privately maintained. But I think there would be something that we could do there in terms of landscaping without necessarily impinging on the accessibility to that section of the Reen, which would be still exposed both to the north and south. So there would be a degree of accessibility there. I think we just need to sort of make sure we take that into account when we're looking at additional landscaping within the scheme that will come forward as part of the condition.
Okay, so just to clarify, if there were an issue that couldn't be addressed, it would have to come back.
Yeah, so I think that'd be something that we would be able to sort of seek through a condition. I feel fairly confident we could do that. Okay. I believe the applicants are willing to allow that to take place.
And the second question again relates to that southeast corner, if I might. I think it was your next slide shows an attenuation tank, which appears to be placed under that maintenance buffer, which normally we're told by the drainage board they don't want stuff in there. So that would obviously, I guess, have to be agreed by the drainage board. And if it weren't, again, that would have to come back.
Yeah, we would need to see some amendments to the plans there to
Okay.
take into account any ODB comments.
Thank you. Mrs. DeVries?
Thank you. In terms of the outline consent, because obviously there are only a few conditions on this because it's an approval of reserve matters. As part of the outline, there's quite robust conditioning in terms of wastewater treatment, surface water drainage and everything like that. So they would have to go through clearance to get sign off on those conditions. It has been raised in terms of the location of that tank with the applicant, just to sort of flag whether that location would be acceptable or not, but there need to be ongoing discussions with the IDB to sign off on that location. In the event they can't sign off on that location, they'll have to redesign it. If the redesign impacts on the layout of the development or significant changes in terms of footprints of properties or anything like that, the risk is they have to come back to us for a revised application. In terms of landscaping within the buffer areas, we do normally have sort of areas of wildflower planting and that type of thing. So we might not necessarily get the height in terms of the boundary treatments, but maintenance only happens occasionally. So we'd have to see what the applicant and the applicant's present to hear the debate in terms of what measures are put in place to try and reinforce that boundary and try and reinforce the privacy of the neighbouring properties. But the details of that are conditioned through the outline and through this application. And we just have to see what details come in as part of the approval of reserve matters.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
I don't have anything really to say. I was going to second this. My only concern was the house Westfield, the position of it and the distance apart, which seems to be fine actually, and they've got all bases covered, so I'm fine with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, then we've had the recommendation moved and seconded, and I think there was an amended condition, wasn't there, in there? Yeah, thank you. So that's been proposed and seconded. All those in support of that, please show. Clearly carried, unanimous? Yep. So permission is granted. Thank you. Members, I'm going to suggest, as that's the last one this morning that we have with a speaker present at the moment, we're going to take a short comfort break at this point and be back at 20 past, about 10 minutes. Right, if we can make a start then on the next application, we're going to be going to Barrow, page 37, and I think, Miss Parsons, you're introducing this one for us virtually. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. It's sharing my screen.
Yep.
This is a full planning application for the erection of a detached dwelling with parking outside of the existing ancillary building. This is on land, home ground, postcode. Is there a funny echo? Is it?
Yeah, if you can just hold on a minute, Shanta, we're getting a sort of intermittent. You're fading in and fading out. Any idea of what we can do to... Shanta, you wouldn't?
Yeah.
You wouldn't by any chance have maybe a headphones set that you might be able to plug in that might help us a bit?
I can try. I don't think it works. Just a minute.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Yep. Yep, we're hearing you now.
Okay. You're very faint, so I'm just going to turn you up, but no problem at all. Got tangled.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share, start the presentation.
So this is a full application for the erection of a detached dwelling on site of an existing outbuilding at home ground off of the Coast Road, Barrow. And the site is located within the settlement boundary and within a predominantly residential area. You can see to the bottom right-hand corner within the red outline is an existing rectangle. That's an outbuilding that's to be demolished. That's another view of the outbuilding, and that's the siting for the proposed dwelling. This access, the existing access off Coast Road, also serves Rosemary Cottage, a site here that's got consent for a dwelling that's not yet built, and home ground, which is under conversion into 3 dwellings. Further to the east along this boundary is a caravan park, and to the south are the houses in Flowers Bloom. And this is the proposal to erect a 2-bed dwelling within the siting where the outbuilding is presently. The garaging would provide parking for 2 vehicles. There would be turning, which would utilise the shared turning for home ground, which is here. And so therefore the existing access would serve the proposed dwelling as well as the existing properties on the site. This is the existing outbuilding. I'll show you some photographs in a moment. And this is the proposed house, a typical modern rendered and tiled building, 2 bedrooms, open plan layout at ground floor level with 2 bedrooms above, both with ensuite facilities. This is standing looking at the north side, which is the front of the existing outbuilding. And this is showing part of the outbuilding that you see to the left of the photograph, and then one of the rear elevations of one of the properties in Flowers Bloom that you can see rendered with the gable. This is actually from Flowers Bloom looking at the rear of the site, looking over the fence, and that is the existing outbuilding. This is back within the site now with the existing outbuilding to the right of the picture and the fencing that separates the holiday park beyond. Now I'm scanning around still with the holiday park beyond the fence and the holiday park to the right of the picture and home ground that you can see the cream rendered part of that building. And more of the same really. And this is a fencing really that just separates home ground with the holiday park. And then standing approximately where that fencing is and looking back towards the site, holiday park on the left-hand side, you can just about see the building, which is behind the yellow van. This is home ground, which is opposite the site being converted. This is then looking westwards, looking back towards Coast Road, with the fence boundary on the western side that bounds Flowers Bloom. This would be, I'll be standing here approximately at the frontage of the proposed dwelling, and another view down towards Coast Road, and a closer view where you can actually see Coast Road, and you can see the width of the existing drive. And this is obviously within the car, looking southwards to see the visibility, and then looking northwards in that direction. So I'll go back to the layout. In terms of the principle of a residential property on this site, as I said, it's within the settlement boundary, it's surrounded by other residential uses. The principle is considered to be acceptable. In terms of amenity and impact on the character of the area, it would be of a traditional or a typical modern building. It's set well back from any public vantage point and back from the road. It's not considered that the building and the development would have any adverse impact on the character of the area. In terms of amenity, residential amenity, the proposed dwelling is designed so as to be sited within the centre of that plot. There would be no windows proposed in the end elevations. The windows in the front elevation, they would be approximately 18 metres from the nearest window, in the home ground conversion. However, they would be obscure glazed and serve the ensuite bathrooms. There is a distance of at least 6 metres from the rear elevation to the boundary at the rear. And beyond that boundary is the turning area for part of the holiday park. So it is not considered that the development would cause any undue adverse impact in terms of loss of light, visual domination, or overlooking. In terms of highway safety, the proposal would utilise the existing access to the site which serves the other properties. There would be parking for 2 vehicles and adequate turning, so vehicles can leave the site within a forward gear. And it's not considered that the additional dwelling would result in such a significant increase in vehicles so as to be detrimental to highway safety. In terms of the surfacing at the entrance, I've noticed that it's not hard surfaced. It's well compacted, but it doesn't appear to be a hard surface tarmac or paved entrance, and therefore I'm recommending that if consent is granted to add condition number 7, which would require the hard surfacing for a distance of 6 metres at the entrance. So therefore the recommendation is to grant consent with an additional condition number 7. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions, please, members? Councillor Kingham.
I noticed the objection from the parish council regarding it to be overdevelopment of the site, but it's in the middle of a caravan site, which is far more dense than this little site. I don't have a problem with it. I'd like to move the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you, and that's with the additional condition. Yeah. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. This is pretty typical of what's down on Coast Road. It's not unusual. There's a lot of properties down there in the same sort of position. Don't have too much of an issue with this, so I'm in this stage. I'm happy to second the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Can I just say this would be a delegated decision with the wording of the additional condition to be agreed?
Okay, you're happy with that, Councillor Kingham and Councillor Grimes? Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lehman. Anybody else want to comment before we come to a vote? Not seeing anybody else, so in which case we have the recommendation to grant permission with the additional condition for a delegated permission. Those in favour, please show. That's unanimously carried, clearly carried. Thank you. Right, members, if you can turn to the next application we have this morning, which is on page, I believe, 99. And we are Wemden Road, Bridgewater. Sure. And Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application relates to a property within Bridgewater on Wemden Road. The application is seeking to increase the amount of rooms used by an existing HMO from 6 to 7. While the description refers to a dwelling, the application is coming before us with a view to providing over and above the permitted development limits in terms of what is permitted for a HMO. So as a bit of background, the application property is currently operating as a 6-bed HMO. It has a license from Sedgemoor District Council for that amount. And that sits within permitted development regulations. So you do not need to have a planning application to occupy a residential property for up to 6 people living together with shared facilities. Once you get over that threshold, then you require planning permission. So that's why it's with us today. So the application site is, as I said, on Wemden Road. It's part of a terrace of properties located to the north of Northfield and fronts onto Wemden Road, just to the east of the cemetery. The application site itself is laid out in a linear fashion with residential curtilage to both the front and rear, with vehicular access to the site and is shared by a number of properties on both sides of the application site. So as we have here, we have the existing residential space as outlined on the existing plans here. So we have a communal kitchen dining area here with a TV room located at first floor level here. And the other rooms are occupied as bedrooms for the existing tenants. The application is seeking to change the TV room to a third bedroom or bedroom 3 which will add to the existing 6 that are there already. So we have 1 bedroom at second floor level. We would have 4 on the first floor level and 2 further ones on the ground floor level with the retained shared space for the kitchen and dining facilities at the rear. Each of these bedrooms would be occupied on a single occupancy basis, and we would be looking at an increase of 1 over that, which is currently licensed at the moment. So this is the front of the property. No physical alterations are proposed to the dwelling, both internally or externally. There will just be a case of utilising one of the rooms for a different purpose. This is the shared vehicular access, single width, but is used by a number of properties at the back, which all have shared, have dedicated parking, but also a shared turning area, which serves as access for the existing properties. This is the rear of the dwelling that we're looking at here. This area is the existing curtilage, and the proposal is to create a parking area for 4 spaces off the back of the property here, while also providing storage for bins and cycle storage. So the proposal is to provide parking spaces all the way up to the shared parking and turning area at the back here. We have had an objection from the Town Council on this application based on the lack of parking provision. And if I go back to the layout plan, it is acknowledged that the layout as proposed, where you have 4 spaces in tandem with each other, would require some organisation on a daily basis to facilitate that maximum occupancy of those spaces. However, if we look at the property as it is now, we have 6 occupants at the property with what appears to be not any significant dedicated parking provision. So we'd be looking at an increase of 1 person and some off-street parking provided within the site, as well as amenity provision for storage and cycle facilities as well. Taking into account the parking proposed, is not considered that this would result in an objection that would be warrant a refusal on this particular property, given the sustainable location of the development. So if you see here, we have Wemden Road, which is a short walking distance away from the amenities within both North Street and West Street, as well as beyond that to the town centre itself, which is all within a short walking distance. So it's not necessarily required that the people living within these rooms within the HMO would require a car for their day-to-day needs. The site is within very short distance of a bus stop, and if further requirements for travel were needed, obviously then they would require the train. It's obviously on a different side of town, but there is significant amount of amenities within a short distance that would enable people to live within the property without causing a detriment to the highway safety of the adjoining roads through on-road parking provision or an increase in the use of unsafe access. So it's recommended that the planning application is approved, subject to the conditions on at the end of the report, and we have limited the accommodation to 7 bedrooms only. This is on the basis that to control the future use of the building, but it's considered that on the basis of that the application is acceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Could I ask a couple of questions just to start with, if we might? From the plans you showed us, they're changing what I think you said was a TV room to a bedroom. That would appear to halve the amount of amenity space that's communal amenity space. Does it still meet the standards for amenity space in terms of that one area that is now the common kitchen dining? Could you clarify in terms of the room sizes of the bedrooms that they meet the standards that they should do? And in terms of the parking, could you just clarify, at present they have 2 spaces, they're indicating 4, which to be brutally frank are completely impractical. But if it was just the 2 spaces, would that affect the recommendation in terms of it's 1 more bedroom over and above what they've currently got?
I think in terms of the recommendation, the application site is restricted in terms of its size and its layout, and like you said, there's probably a practicality issue with the accessibility of those parking spaces. With the size of the property itself and its current use, obviously there is a need. Well, there would be a need for a number of parking spaces if we were going to go by the parking strategy. It's on the basis of the increase in 1 bedroom for over the existing situation. I don't believe that we would consider that to be a significant issue from a highway safety perspective or parking. And yeah, I appreciate that there would be a degree of shifting cars about on a daily basis to try and get someone out who may need to go earlier than someone else. But I think that would be something that they would probably have to deal with right now, even with the reduced parking provision they have at the moment. Because at the moment, with 2 spaces that they may have there now, these are obviously operated in tandem as well. So there's a degree of organisation that we require. It's not considered that the increase in the number of bedrooms by 1 would necessarily result in a detrimental impact in that respect. In terms of the communal space, yes, the communal space itself is. It is above a certain threshold in terms of the size of the bedrooms that are being provided. I believe one of the bedrooms is 0.6 square meters less than the ideal 9 square meters that is required for all the rooms from a licensing perspective. But the provision of I believe that if you have a 27 square meter provision of communal space, you can reduce the amount of space within the bedrooms to 6 square meters or 6.5 square meters, sorry. Whereas if you have a reduced communal space, you then have to provide a 9 square meter provision for each of the rooms. So we have a bit of a balance there. The room sizes on the whole, 6 of them do meet the standards, and some of them quite comfortably. The one that's actually being proposed as a change does meet that standard. It's one of the existing rooms that we have within the room, one of the bedrooms we have, which doesn't, but I guess that would be a question for licensing. But on the whole, I think on balance, from a planning perspective, the room sizes themselves more than meet the requirements in the sense of 6 of them, and one of them just falls short of that threshold. But from a planning perspective, it's not considered that we would necessarily require that.
Okay, Mrs. Reid, you indicated.
Yeah, I think Liam's actually covered it, but in terms of, because we did send an email to the licensing, because obviously if we grant planning permission, that doesn't stop them needing a license, so they still need to go through a separate process with licensing, and licensing need to sign off on the internal size and scale and dimensions, and if they don't, they're going to have a problem with licensing, and they'll probably come back to us for some revisions. But in terms of licensing, the kitchen needs to be 11 square meters, which the kitchen is 19.7. So the kitchen's in excess of what they need, but the overall communal space should be 27.5, which isn't. If it was 27.5, they would only need 6.5 metre square minimum as bedrooms. But it does say that if you can't achieve the communal space, the bedroom should be 9 metre squared minimum. And as Liam set out, sort of most of them, we've got 14 metres squared, 10.5, 9.6, 10.5, 9.4, 16. There is one that's 8.4. So it will come down to licensing whether that one deficiency, which is an existing one in the 6-bed HMO, is deficient enough that they would decline the licence. But on balance of sort of the sizes, given there's only one and it's an existing one, as officers, we're generally comfortable they've covered what they need to for licensing for the planning amenity assessment. But obviously the licensing process will be separate in addition to this anyway. And then in terms of car parking, you could get 4 on there, but I completely agree with Councillor Filmer's assessment that it would be very difficult to get 4 on there and actually use them in any meaningful way. So in terms of what you could reasonably get up, sorry, can you put up the layout plan again, which shows the parking spaces? So from that layout, because of its position with the parking and turning area, I think you could relatively comfortable get 2 on there. And if you've only got 2 on there, you could easily negotiate moving them in and out fairly regularly. So if you're looking at a 4-bed property with 2 parking spaces, which is currently a 6-bed HMO, and it's going up to 7, it's one additional person utilising 2 spaces. So then the debate is, where is the property in terms of sustainability? Is it close to facilities? Can you reasonably get to other facilities? So our opinion is that whilst you could get 4 on there, I don't think it's reasonable to say that would be operationally practical, but you could get 2 on there. There is limited, but there is on-street parking in the surrounding highway network, and you are quite close to a lot of the facilities. So on that basis, and the fact there's only 1 additional bedroom in the HMO other than what they're currently operating at, we don't think you could sustain a refusal on lack of parking for this particular site, but that's for members to debate and consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Kingham.
Right. On the alterations from a kitchen to a bedroom, I noticed when on the kitchen, as it is, there is a doorway which goes to the outside. Now, when it becomes a bedroom, that doorway is blocked up. What means of fire escape have they got from that end of the building?
So the door from the kitchen is retained at ground floor level. So this is the existing, this is the proposed plan here. So we have the doorway here. The TV room itself is at first floor level. So it's bedroom 3 as shown on that plan there. So we have the TV room. That's the existing layout. And that's the proposed. So the existing doorway to the rear will be maintained as part of the proposed plan.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. I noted the town council had objected. Were there any other objections from neighbours? Any responses at all from neighbours?
No. I mean, I had one phone call from a neighbour, but they said that the current occupants were fairly good. They were just wanting to know what the parameters of what they were proposing to do was, and I just explained to them there were no physical alterations. I think that's where they may have been concerned, but no, we didn't receive any objections from residents at all.
Councillor Hendry.
Thank you. All the points have been covered. I'm not going to start going on about car parking, which is awful, but all points have been covered. But the flip side is it's very difficult to actually turn this down, because they do again seem to have all bases covered on this one too. And as much as I don't think it's fantastic or ideal, it's very difficult to refuse this. So that said, I'll put forward the recommendation to accept and grant permission. Thank you.
Mrs. DeVries.
Apologies, just butting in again. The last condition that's on there, it does say accommodation should be limited and shall be for up to 7 bedrooms only. Given the constraints of the footprint, we just wanted to add in which shall all be single occupancy. So just for clarity, it's requiring the 7 bedrooms to be single occupancy only, so it can't be shared accommodation. So it would only be for 7 people, but that would help address the parking issue and the site requirements if members are happy with that change.
Yep. Councillor Hendry.
Absolutely correct, but in theory what you're saying is that could actually generate 7 cars. It could. But all that said, again, the car parking is terrible, but it's very difficult to find a reason legally and technically to turn this down. So I'll stand by what I said. Thank you.
So just to confirm, you're moving the recommendation with that amended condition to ensure it's single occupancy, not doubles. Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Kingham, thank you. We've only got that's the one recommendation we've got in front of us, which is to grant permission with the amended condition. Those in favour, please show. And those against, please show. Okay, so that is clearly carried, 12 in favour and 2 against and no abstentions. Right, members, that brings us to the end of the applications that we have this morning. If you could turn in your papers to the report section 7.1, which is on page 144. And Mrs. DeVries, I think you're going to take us through these reports.
Sorry, can you confirm the page number?
Page 144. Is the planning appeals received?
Perfect. Right, so planning appeals received. We've had an appeal in for an outline application with all matters reserved for erection of a dwelling. That's
Can I
land
just
north.
pause you for 1 minute? Are you able to magnify that just a little bit? Because I don't know about anyone else, but I couldn't read that. I need to get the glasses. Spot on. Thank you.
Perfect. So land to the north of 27 Pedwell Hill in Ashcott. That one was a committee application, so that one's currently at appeal.
Not seeing any questions or comments on that one. So if you move to 7.2, appeals decided. 145.
So we've had, it was an application for prior approval for change of use of an agricultural building to a dwelling. We recommended refusal. It was a delegated decision, as prior approvals have sort of fairly limited timeframes on them. It was a written reps appeal and it was dismissed by the inspector.
Thank you. Again, not seeing any comments or questions. Nope. So if we move to 7.3, certificates of lawfulness.
Okay, so we've refused planning permission for the bungalow wagon nursery, the Causeway in Mark, which was a certificate of lawfulness, which was trying to establish the existing use of a dwelling as residential without any agricultural or horticultural tie. They didn't submit enough information for us to be satisfied that it was the case that they'd breached that condition for the required period of time. And we also refused planning permission for change of use of a domestic outbuilding to a dwelling under a certificate of lawfulness.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on those? No, in which case, thank you all very much. That brings us to the close of this morning's business. So we will close the meeting at the moment and we'll restart again this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Thank you all very much. Right, good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock. We'll make a start on our afternoon session. Can I welcome you all to the Development Committee? I'm Councillor Filmer, I'm Chairman of the committee. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get on to the agenda this afternoon. If fire alarms go off, then they are real. We've not been told of any drill, so exits are to the rear of the room and to the side. Toilet facilities are located through the central double doors at the rear. And if you need to have a drink, there is water on the side of the hall to my right. Could I ask everyone, councillors and members of the public, if you've got a mobile phone, please make sure it's turned off or turned to silent, just so it doesn't interrupt the process today. And just so you know who's in front of you today, to my right is Mr. Taylor from our Democratic Services. To my left, Mr. De Vries from our Planning Department. We are joined online by our legal department in the shape of Dawn Lehman, who's on the screen. Thank you. And we will also have planning officers who will be presenting the applications to us both within the room and externally this afternoon. On the wings of the table to my right and left are the councillors who will be ultimately debating and deciding the applications. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting in that all the councillors who are involved in the decision making have to be in the room to cast their votes. They cannot join us online, although other councillors can join us if they wish to view the proceedings or indeed if they've registered to speak. The format of this afternoon's business is as per the agenda that's been circulated. And for those of the members of the public who are joining us online, you can see the presentations also through the council website. We'll take each application in turn. They'll be presented by the case officers. You will then have the opportunity, if members of the public have registered to speak, to address the committee, and following that will then be debated by the members and then ultimately voted on. Just moving on, I think the next thing we can move on to the rest of the agenda, which would be a good place to start. So do we have any apologies for this afternoon, please?
Chairman, Sir Tony Hayward.
Thank you, and all other councillors are again present and correct. We dealt with the minutes this morning. Item 3 is urgent business. There is no urgent business that isn't on our agenda. Public speaking time for members of the public. For those of you who've registered to speak this afternoon, as I mentioned, we'll take the applications in turn. We'll then ask the officers to present them. Following that presentation, we'll then ask you to come forward to the speakers table to address the committee. You will see there's a clock on the front. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. The clock counts the time down, so it shows you how much time you've got left to go. So if you can draw your comments to a close before that expires, that would be most appreciated. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations for this afternoon? Councillor Evans.
Thank you. I believe it's page 129, which is an application in my ward of North Petherton.
Thank you. Any other declarations? I believe I need to declare one on page 115, which is in my district ward, although not in the county one. Any others? And on that, I've taken no part in any of the discussions. So where you've heard the declarations this afternoon, where members have declared they've taken no part at the town or parish council level, and that's on the basis that if members get involved at the town and parish level, it can be perceived that they've already made up their mind on an application. So we have a standing order within this committee which basically says you can do one or the other, you can't do both. So where members have said they haven't been involved, then that leaves them free to come and debate and decide the applications at this particular committee. We'll move on to then the planning applications, and I should just mention to members before we get on to the applications themselves, we have an application that was listed on page 137 at Wemden. That application has been removed from the agenda for this afternoon. There is further information that we are having to seek with regard to certifications of ownership, and based on that, it's been withdrawn from our agenda today and may well return to us at a later stage. The speaker who was registered has been advised and therefore is aware that this will not be decided this afternoon. Right, members, so if you turn in your papers to the first application, we do have a speaker present, which is on page 115 and East Huntsville. And is it Ms. Elvey? Are you presenting this one today?
Hi, yes, thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Yeah, there is a slight feedback, slight echo. I don't know if
Getting at this.
I'll try talking now. Yeah, I can hear myself sort of a second later.
I don't know whether that's something at our end or whether that's something at.
Okay, it's stopped now. Okay, there's no echo now. That's fine. Right. Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the application at Hillview in Withy Road and East Huntsville. It's for the erection of a two-storey side extension. The application is before members as the parish council object to the application on the grounds that the extension is too large in relation to the existing property, and it's considered that inadequate information has been provided to ascertain if the internal drainage board's standing advice can be complied with. Since the publication of the report, the ecologist has confirmed that the ecology conditions that have been recommended are suitable, and Environmental Health have since submitted their comment, which was no observations. So this slide lists the relevant policies from the local plan in respect to this application, and that the main considerations are visual and residential amenity, highway safety, flood risk, and ecological issues. The application site is within the parish of East Huntsville, approximately a kilometre west of the village. The property is accessed via Withy Road, which is the Class C road. The application site comprises of a main dwelling served by a number of outbuildings. To the east of the site lies an equestrian area that is also under the same ownership as the application site. So the application seeks consent for the erection of a two-storey side extension on the east elevation on the site of some of the existing outbuildings. So this slide shows the existing and the proposed elevations. The proposal will, whilst it's described as two-storey, will at the front be more like 1.5 stories, with a set down ridge, and the eaves also on the front are set down compared to the main property. The floor plans are shown on this slide. So the extension will accommodate an additional bedroom with a dressing room and an ensuite at first floor. And at ground floor, it will provide 2 reception rooms and a shower room. And here are some photos of the site, including an image from Google Street View showing the wider area. So the proposed extension is considered to be an acceptable addition to the property, as it's of an appropriate size and scale that's in proportion with the main dwelling. The extension will also be finished in matching materials. The application is in a fairly isolated location, and therefore the extension is not considered to impact the amenities of other residents due to their considerable distance from the site. It's considered to be served by adequate parking and turning area due to the parking area that's already exists on site. The application site is in flood zone 3, but as the extension relates to an existing property, it's considered to be acceptable. In respect of surface water drainage, the proposal is considered compliant with the IDB standing advice due to the distance of the extension from the drainage ditches. A preliminary route assessment's been submitted in relation to the buildings that are to be demolished, and this has determined that these structures have negligible habitat value. Biodiversity enhancement condition has been provided. It's for these reasons that the proposal is considered to be acceptable and complies with the relevant local plan policies. Therefore, the officer's recommendation is to approve the application alongside the relevant conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you'll see, we've got a speaker on this application. Tim Rimmer would like to come forward. Good afternoon again. Just remind you, you've got the 3 minutes. You'll see the time on the clock, and please start whenever you're ready.
Best to leave this line. Oh, I suppose I better speak into
Yeah, you need to hold it quite close.
Lovely. Good afternoon. Brian Pugsley was born and raised in East Huntsville, and the couple have lived in Withy Road for over 30 years. They have 3 adult children, 2 of which still live at home. So including partners, it's a real house full, hence the need for more space. The property is set back from the road within a large garden with equine facilities to the east. There are no immediate neighbours, so there is no risk that the extension would cause a loss of privacy or light or overbear any other houses. The extension, though generous, in our opinion, is not too large. It's located on a group of single-storey outbuildings that are proposed to be demolished and incorporates elements of future-proofing. There's a proposed ground floor shower room, and the hobby room has the potential to be used as a bedroom when the applicants can no longer cope with the stairs. I believe the extension conforms with planning policy in that it's set back from the front, has a narrower frontage than the existing house, and the roof has been set down to create the required subservience. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Members, any comments or questions, please? Councillor King.
I'm going to get a call out this time. Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a similar application we've had in this area before, where somebody wants to put an extension on to make the house more acceptable for a large family. This complies with that. Also, the flooding issue, the drainage board are happy with the proposal, and I have no problem with this. I think it suits the area well, and it suits the existing property, so I would have no problem in proposing this application.
Thank you. I've also got Councillors Hendry and Revens, so start with Councillor Hendry. Hold on, just bear with us while it gets turned on.
It's okay. Okay. Don't show off, Bill. It's all right. There is nothing negative I can say about this whatsoever. Nothing. It's absolutely lovely, and I just do not know why these things get this far. I don't know. Nothing negative whatsoever. I'm more than happy to second Stuart King. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Revens. Okay. I'm not seeing any other comments around the room. So we have a recommendation that's been moved and seconded to grant permission. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Clearly carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, members, if you could turn to the next application then, which I believe is on page 123. We're in the parish of Mark. Okay. Mr. Titchener.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, this is an application for the change of use of land to equestrian. The erection of a barn to include 3 stables. Within that building would be 3 stables, tap rooms, storage for hay and straw and farm implements. It's at land northwest of Rose Farm on Yarrow Road in Mark. It's before members purely because the applicant is related to a district councillor. So the application site is located down here, just off Yarrow Road. It's formed of an agricultural field to the south of Mark Causeway, and it's on the west side of Yarrow Road. There's an existing access which serves the field at present, and there are no changes proposed in that regard. The site is currently bounded by existing hedgerows. And just here we have a zoomed in aerial image of the application site showing the existing field barn. The applicant lives at Rose Farm, which is just over to the southeast of the application site over here. This is just the red line plan showing the extent of the land subject to the change of use. And again, the block plan, this shows the footprint of where the proposed building is going to go, just inside the site access here off of Main Road. The application would enable the erection of this stable building and fodder store here. So the applicant currently keeps their horses on the other side of the road, and some of their existing properties, some of their equipment is having to be stored outside. So this will enable them to store it on site safely and securely. So these are the detailed elevations of the building. So it's to be enclosed as detailed in the officer's report, and it's been designed as a fairly functional stable block with doors at each end, which will be kept open once in use, when in use as a stable building. There are perspex roof lights providing natural light, and the applicant advised that artificial solar lighting will also be installed, though no solar roof panels are proposed. The size, scale and design of the building is not inappropriate, being a fairly typical construction with fibre cement sheeting above concrete panels and a fibre cement sheet roof, so fairly standard design for an agricultural and or equestrian building. So these are just some photographs of the existing site. So the image at the top is taken from the adjoining field gate, looking across the site to the north, whilst the image in the bottom right looks at the existing field shelter. So it's a fairly flat site, bounded by existing hedgerows. And then a couple more photographs just looking across, the top 2 taken from the same access point, looking across the application site. And final 2 looking from across the road at the access, which is formed of a consolidated surface. And as you can see, the existing boundary hedgerows that provide a degree of screening, which will provide screen views of some of the building from the highway, though the height of it is such that there will be some views possible. Just the key issues, just to summarise. So the proposed use is for equestrian activity, which is considered to be a sustainable countryside activity. We would consider the built form to be of an acceptable size, scale and design. The Highway Authority has confirmed standing advice is proposed, though there are no changes proposed to the existing agricultural access. Given the nature of the development and proposed use, it's not considered that if consented to development give rise to any significant increase in terms of the nature and number of vehicle movements, and as such no conditions are suggested. The Internal Drainage Board had also advised standing advices to apply. The application site does lie within flood zone 1, and the plans submitted indicate the building is to be sited more than 9 metres from the nearest watercourse, which would therefore bring it in compliance with the IDB standing advice. An informative would be added, however, to remind the applicant of the need for land drainage consent, potentially. Conditions are also proposed with regard to biodiversity enhancements to secure those on the permission, and also to prevent any external lighting without the prior written authority of the local planning authority. So, subject to conditions, the proposal is considered to be compliant with policy, and we are recommending it for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from members? Councillor Kingham.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The roof sheeting in the cladding, did you say it was going to be just standard, or would it be a coloured sheeting? Because obviously it'd be quite prominent in the corner of the field.
It's what the material they're proposing for the roof, I believe, is to be fibre cement sheeting, which is a pretty typical roofing material on agricultural buildings of this nature. I'd say it's probably the most commonly used material used on agricultural buildings that we get in Sedgemoor. They are slightly grey of colour, the fibre cement sheets, but they are by far the most popular for applicants for put on their buildings, largely because of their longevity. They last a lot longer than other types of roofing material on buildings of this nature.
Yeah, just sort of it has been coloured, it wouldn't be quite so outstanding in the field as a farmer does. But otherwise, I have no problem in proposing this application.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Scott.
In reply to that, I think you can get different coloured sheeting. You could get a green one if you wanted to, but as the officer has said, I think the grey ones are probably more common in the countryside. I will like to second that, please.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So we have the recommendation before us, which is to grant permission. All those in favour of that, please show. That's unanimous as well, clearly carried. Right, members, if you turn to the next application and we move to North Petherton, and I think Ms. Elvey, are you presenting this one?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chairman.
Virtually?
Yes, virtually.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, is it presenting or?
We've got the front cover.
Yeah, that's fine. That's brilliant. Okay, I just know the right bit. Okay. So, hello again. So this application is at Dunn's Cottage and Dunn's Barn in North Newton. The application is before members as the Town Council object to the application on the grounds that it's not in keeping with the street scene. So the application's for the erection of a detached garage, new vehicular access and parking area for Dunn's Cottage, and a single-storey extension to Dunn's Barn, and retrospective consent for the erection of a fence. So this slide lists the relevant policies in the local plan in respect of this application. The main considerations are visual and residential amenity, highway safety, and historic environment. So the application site is in the village of North Newton, which is in the boundary of North Petherton. And the application site itself comprises of 2 dwellings. So originally the site was a main house, which is the white building seen in this indicative 3D view, known as Dunn's Cottage, and an annex, which is known as Dunn's Barn, which is the other building sort of towards the right of that 3D view that's kind of slightly raised compared to the other property. So the annex was confirmed as used as an independent dwelling by certificate of lawfulness determined last year. So they're now 2 dwellings. The application seeks consent for the erection of a garage and creation of a parking area and access for the cottage, and the erection of a single-storey extension to the front of the barn. The garage will have a ridge height of 4.1 metres with an eaves height of 2.7 metres. The extension to the barn will infill the gap between the existing front of the property and the garage. The scheme also seeks retrospective consent for the erection of a fence. So the drawings are here. The agent applicant, sorry, also provided this indicative 3D view. So I do caveat that this is indicative because these drawings are not, or you can't scale off them necessarily, but I think it does help show the different levels in the site and kind of show the overall scheme. So this slide shows photos from my site visit showing the wider street scene. So the property opposite has a garage immediately on the road. The street itself is made up of a mixture of different building types with differing distances from the road. And this slide also shows views as you emerge from both the new access on the top photos and also the retained access, which is on the bottom photos. So in terms of street scene, as previously said, the street is characterised by a variety of property types, and the proposed extension to the barn is set back from the road, and therefore limited views of this from the wider area are perhaps views of this from the wider area are limited. The fence is considered to be visually acceptable because there are a number of other similar fences in the vicinity, some of which are even closer to the road, sort of road facing compared to this one. The proposed garage is also considered to be acceptable because it replicates other garages in the locality in terms of size and scale and siting. In terms of residential amenity, the development is considered to be an appropriate distance from neighbouring properties, to therefore not impact adjacent occupants. In respect of highway safety, there's considered to be adequate visibility in both directions for both accesses. And in respect of the historic environment, no concerns been raised by South West Heritage. And it's therefore for these reasons that the recommendation is to approve Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any comments or questions, please? Councillor Kingham first, or? Yeah. Oh, Councillor Rivens.
Thank you. I'm struggling to understand the Town Council's objection to this one, where it's not in keeping with the street scene. The street scene is, I would describe as higgledy-piggledy, I think, as a fair old mixture of property designs and so on in that part of Maunsell Road. I can't see a problem with this personally and would move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Kingham.
Yes, I'm likewise like Councillor Evans. It seems rather strange that the council would be against this application, but I'm happy to second recommendation.
I'm not seeing any other comments or questions from around the room, in which case we have a recommendation that has been moved and seconded to grant permission. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous as well. That's clearly carried as well unanimously. So members, that brings us to the end of the applications that we have this afternoon. So thank you very much, all of you, for your attendance, and we will close the meeting. Thank you.